In this video, we're going to talk about 5 different ways to write your first song easily. Let's talk about it. Rule number 1 is to start with the music and then write the lyrics. And essentially there are 2 parts to why I think you should do this. The first is that it just is the easiest way to write a song. Start with the chord progression, then write a melody, and then write the lyrics. Most people, even if you have no knowledge of music theory, can listen to a chord progression and improvise a melody on top of that by just humming along. If you are at all musical, you probably can hear, ooh, that note I hit is wrong. And very often too, your voice sort of auto-corrects to the right pitch because we're so used to being on pitch that we hear when it's off, and a lot of times our voice just sort of automatically goes sharp or flat to sort of be like, ooh, that's a wrong note, let me flatten until it sounds right. So you don't really need to understand the underlying music theory to write a melody that goes with a chord progression you already have. And then the second part is that for most people, it's just more intuitive to listen to music and derive from that music what it would be about than the other way around. If you think about it, we're really quite used to doing this. When we hear soundtracks in movies, or we listen to classical pieces, or really any instrumental piece, we still get a certain feeling and emotion from the song where you can almost feel what the story it is telling is. The opposite is not nearly as intuitive. How many of us really think it's easy to look at poetry or lyrics and just hear music in our head? Do you look at lyrics and hear a melody and hear a chord progression in your head? Maybe, but for most people, probably not. And even if you do, the question is which one is easier for you? And I think for the vast majority of people, it's much easier to listen to music and derive what you think that song would be about than to look at poetry and derive what that music that would go with it would sound like. Rule number 2 is to use a common chord progression. And yes, every time I talk about this, it does somewhat pain me because, as people who have watched me before know, I am super into A, the importance of music theory, and B, the fact that I think starting a song with a chord progression is very often one of the weaker ways to start a song, despite the fact that it's one of the most popular. But when it comes to your first song, the goal is to get a win and to not get so frustrated that you quit songwriting altogether. The goal is to finish a song. Be like, hey, I can actually do this, and then to write more songs and improve over time. The thing that gives you the best shot to do that is to simply utilize a chord progression that already has been used a lot, so you know that it's a chord progression that works. Otherwise, you're probably going to try to write your own chord progression, it just won't sound right, you'll be like, why? And then you'll get frustrated, and then you'll quit. And that's a loss. That's not what we want. And another reason this is going to be important for your first song is at this point, you probably don't know music theory at all. And you may even think, ooh, music theory is this scary thing that I don't really understand, and people tell me it's academic and it's not useful, and I just get overwhelmed and think of school and I don't want to have anything to do with it. Which, by the way, everything I just said is wrong. That's not what music theory is. But I understand that you don't want to learn a bunch of music theory before you can even write your first song. And the best way to be able to write a song with no music theory knowledge without getting super frustrated and being like, why does nothing make sense? Why is this so hard? Is to start with a stock chord progression. Because when you start with a stock chord progression, which is what I call common chord progressions, ones that are used over and over and over again, from there, if you are able, as I talked about in the last step, to sort of just improvise a melody on top that works. You don't really understand what keys are and what notes you should be bound to, but your voice just sort of automatically locks to pitch enough that you can eventually improvise a melody that works. Now you have all your music, your chord progression and your melody, without once having to think about music theory. Now music theory, of course, would help you. I have many other videos about that. We're not talking about that in this video. This is not saying music theory isn't important, but when it comes to writing your first song, you want as few prerequisites as possible. You just want to get your first song done. Prove to yourself that you can write songs, and then you can worry about getting better at songwriting, which would involve things like learning more about poetry, learning more about how music works, which is music theory, and things like that. Rule number 3 is to write your melodies with whatever instrument is easiest. Now I say this because a lot of people take for granted that they should write their vocal melody with their voice. And this is something that I actually think is not a good place to start. It's not a good premise. You should write your vocal melody with whatever instrument you are best at writing vocal melodies with, which may not be your voice. For a lot of starter songwriters, it actually will be your voice. For me, personally, I write the best melodies at a piano because piano is the instrument I'm best at. You can visualize the melody when you play it on the piano in a way that you can't when you're singing out loud. the tendency of singing out loud to improvise and write melodies is that you sort of just default to something that's comfortable for your voice, because none of us really default to making ourselves not comfortable, right? We default to watching TV. We don't default to going on 10-mile runs. So it's very human to sort of default to what's comfortable. And that doesn't always result in a great vocal melody, because sometimes a great vocal melody is one that isn't particularly comfortable to just improvise. So for many reasons, for me personally, writing a vocal melody with a keyboard or piano is almost always way better than writing with my voice. But if you are somebody who doesn't really know much about music theory, you wouldn't know what notes to use, you don't understand what key your chord progression is in, then yeah, improvising with your voice is going to be the way to go. But if you are somebody who's new to songwriting, but maybe you are really good at piano already, and you do have a firm grasp of keys, you know that C major has no sharps or flats, you know that D major has an F sharp and a C sharp, and you know that your chord progression is, let's say, in G major. So now you know all the notes that are in the scale of G major, and you're really good at the piano already, and maybe you're not that great of a vocalist. So for you, it might actually be easier for you to write your vocal melody at the keyboard, because you can visualize and know, okay, I have all the notes of G major, which are all the natural notes except for F, which would be an F sharp. If you know that, and you're really good at the piano, then it's probably going to be better for you to actually write your melody with the piano. Don't feel pressured to write a vocal melody with your vocals. Write whatever is going to be best for you. And for some of you, it may be the piano because you're a great pianist. For some of you, you may be really good at the flute and you can't actually sing much at all. You might actually write a better vocal melody with your flute because you're used to improvising with your flute in a way that you just aren't with your voice. Rule number 4 is to write about what you know. Now, what I don't agree with is when people say things like you should always write about what you know and nothing else. I think that's a great way to stay stagnant as an artist and to not improve. Yes, everything you write about should probably be somewhat connected to something that you know, but the idea that you just write whatever you're going through right now and just the thing that you know best is not a great way to grow as an artist. But when it comes to your first song, it's not the time to get fanciful and to get all waxing poetic and all that sort of thing. Now is the time to write about what you know about, because again, our main goal is that you finish your first song and you get that confidence that, hey, I can do this, and then you can improve over time. And it's actually really fun to improve over time and to learn new things and integrate it into your songwriting. That's one of the most fun parts of being a songwriter or a creator in any way, is just slowly getting better over time. But you need to give yourself that chance by getting that first win, as we've talked about. And a great way to get your first win lyrically is to simply talk about something that you absolutely feel to your core, and that is something that you know. If you're going through a breakup, probably write about that. If you're going through a great period in your life where everything just seems to be going great and you feel like you're just on top of the world, write about that. Write about whatever's going to come most natural to you, because our goal, again, is to make sure you get that checkbox. You finish your first song, you prove to yourself, I can do this. Rule number 5, keep it simple. Keep in mind, this is your first song, or maybe one of your first songs. Maybe you're here because you've tried to write a song, you have like 10 half songs, and you haven't finished a song and you're frustrated and you're like, what's wrong with me? Keep it simple. A lot of times the reason that people fail out of their first song is they didn't keep it simple. Whether that be keeping it simple with the chord progression, or keeping it simple with the lyrics, or with the song structure. So another thing to maybe not do specifically that's not keeping it simple is don't start inventing your own song sections or going crazy and just having an A section, a B section, a C section, and a D section, and it's a 10-minute song that goes on forever and really has movements rather than song sections. No. It's your first song, you want to get that win. Keep it simple. Do something like verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. So only 2 song sections that get repeated. And then you also could do maybe verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. If you want to get really crazy, maybe have a pre-chorus, maybe take out a bridge. But for the most part, you should keep it simple. Now is not the time to break all of the rules. Learn the rules first, be good with the rules, and then break the rules. Because of course, rules in art are something that exist for a reason, but also are meant to be broken. But usually you should learn to work within the rules before you start to break the rules. So be sure to keep it simple. This is your first song. The goal of this song is not to write the best song you can. The goal of this song is to successfully complete a song and prove to yourself that you absolutely can do this, because that is what's going to allow you to write the next song and the next song and the next song and get better over time, and eventually write songs that are really sophisticated if that's what you want to do. The key word there is over time. you gotta make sure to get to the point that you can be more sophisticated, which is gonna take learning, it's gonna take practice, and the best way to make sure that you're learning and practicing is to actually write your first song successfully. So hopefully this was helpful to you. If it was, something else that you'll find helpful, especially after your first song, is my free keys cheat sheet. This is the best intro you're gonna get to some music theory in a way that's super easy to understand and basically just gives you the answers for now. This is going to be the beginning of what allows you to start writing your own chord progressions rather than just using stock or common chord progressions. Again, for your first song, just use a stock chord progression. Do G major, D major, E minor, and C major. 1, 5, 6, 4 in the context of G major, totally fine. It's your first song. But after that, you're going to want to be able to write your own chord progressions and not just use the same old tired things that have been done a million times before. And this is going to be a great first step for that. It gives you in every key what the main triads or main chords are in that key, as well as what the notes in that key are. So you can look at the different chords and say, okay, let's make a progression of these chords that are all in, let's say, E major, and then from there I can figure out, okay, and now I'm gonna go over to the piano, I need to improvise a melody. Here are all the notes I have as options for writing my melody. So be sure to check it out. My free gift to you. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure, please make sure, your goal, I've said it a million times, I'm gonna say it one more time, your goal is to successfully write your first song and prove to yourself that you can do it, because I know that you can do it. I know that I don't know who you are, but I'm that confident you still can do it. No matter who you are, you absolutely can write a song. That doesn't mean everybody's equally talented, of course they aren't, but you are capable of writing a song. Don't worry about the talent. Don't worry about any of that other stuff. Your goal is to get a win, get some confidence, and then to get better and better over time. But that starts with your first win. Keep it simple. Follow these 5 rules for your first song. So go out there and write your first song.